Captain Jake Morrison stood at the large window of his ship, looking out at the blue and green planet below. The planet was beautiful, with swirling white clouds and vast oceans that reminded him of Earth. But this was not Earth. This was Zephyr Prime, home to the first alien race that humans had ever met. Jake felt nervous butterflies in his stomach. After 3 months of traveling through space, they were finally here. The UES Horizon had carried him and his crew across the galaxy for this moment. First contact with an alien species. It was the most important day in human history. "Captain, incoming message from the surface," said Lisa Harper from her communication station. Lisa was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and bright green eyes. She had been chosen for this mission because she was the best at learning new languages quickly. "Put it through," Jake replied. He straightened his blue uniform and walked to the center of the bridge. His crew gathered around him. There was Dr. Carl Bennett, their scientist who studied alien life. Carl was older with gray hair and thick glasses. He had been excited about this mission for months. Tony Rodriguez stood nearby, ready to protect the crew if anything went wrong. Tony was strong and alert, always watching for danger. The main screen flickered and showed a face that made everyone gasp. The alien was tall and thin, with pale white skin that seemed to glow softly. Its eyes were huge and dark, taking up much of its face. The creature had no hair and very long fingers. When it spoke, its voice was soft and musical. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the alien said. "I am High Counselor Vexhai of the Zephyrian people. We welcome you to our world." Jake stepped forward. "Thank you, Counselor Vexhai. I am Captain Jake Morrison. We come in peace, hoping to learn from each other and become friends." The alien's large eyes seemed to study Jake carefully. "We are pleased by your arrival. We have been watching your species for some time. You are interesting. We would like to meet you in person. Will you come to our ship?" Jake looked at his crew. They had talked about this moment many times. Meeting aliens face to face was risky, but it was why they had come so far from home. "We would be honored," Jake said, "but perhaps it would be better if you came to our ship first. We want you to feel comfortable." Vexhai seemed to think about this. "Very well, we will come to you, but we must bring our telepath Kirven. Communication will be much easier with mind-to-mind contact." The word telepath made everyone on the bridge look at each other. They had heard rumors that the aliens could read minds, but no one was sure if it was true. "Mind-to-mind contact?" Jake asked. "Yes," Vexhai explained. "We Zephyrians communicate through thought. It is much better than using crude sounds like your speech. Our telepath can touch your mind and we can understand each other perfectly. It is how advanced species should communicate." Dr. Bennett moved closer to Jake. "Captain, this could be very valuable for science. If they can really read minds, we could learn so much." Jake nodded slowly. "We agree to meet with your telepath, Counselor." "Excellent. We will arrive in 1 hour. Prepare a clean, quiet room. The telepathic process requires focus." The screen went dark. The bridge was silent for a moment as everyone thought about what would happen next. "Well, this is it," Lisa said. "Real aliens with real mind-reading powers." Tony crossed his arms. "I don't like it, Captain. Letting someone into your head seems dangerous." "It's a risk we have to take," Jake replied. "This is why we're here, to make contact and learn about other species." Dr. Bennett was already making notes on his tablet. "Think about what we could discover. If telepathy is real, it changes everything we know about communication and the brain." The next hour passed quickly. The crew prepared a small meeting room with comfortable chairs and good lighting. Jake changed into his best uniform. His hands were shaking slightly, but he tried to stay calm. He was about to make history. When the alien ship arrived, it was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. It was smooth and white, shaped like a teardrop, and it moved without making any sound. It attached to the side of the human ship with a soft clicking noise. Jake, Lisa, Dr. Bennett, and Tony waited in the meeting room. The door opened and 2 aliens entered. The first was Vexhai, who looked exactly like he had on the screen. The second alien was even more unusual. This one was taller and thinner, with longer fingers and eyes that seemed to glow with a soft blue light. "This is Kirvan, our most skilled telepath," Vexhai said. "Kirvan has touched the minds of thousands of beings across many worlds." Kirvan stepped forward and spoke in a voice even softer than Vexhai's. "I am honored to be the first to experience a human mind. Your species is new to us. We have studied your radio signals and your primitive technology, but we have never felt your thoughts." The word primitive made Tony frown, but Jake held up a hand to keep everyone calm. "We're honored to meet you both," Jake said. "How does this process work?" Kirvan's large eyes focused on Jake. "It is simple. I place my hands on your head and open my mind to yours. You will feel a gentle presence, like a warm light in your thoughts. Do not fight it. Let me in, and we will understand each other as no two species ever have." Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. He looked at his crew one last time, then nodded at the alien telepath. "I'm ready," he said. Kirvan moved closer to Captain Jake Morrison. The alien's long, pale fingers trembled slightly as they reached toward Jake's head. The meeting room was completely quiet. Lisa Harper held her breath. Dr. Carl Bennett watched with wide eyes, his tablet ready to record everything. Tony Rodriguez stood alert, his hand resting near his weapon. "Relax your mind," Kirvan whispered. "Think of peaceful things. Let me find the pathways of your thoughts." Jake closed his eyes and tried to think calm thoughts. He thought about his home on Earth, about the ocean waves, about quiet mornings with coffee. But his mind was also full of other things. He was thinking about the mission, about his crew's safety, about what his wife would say when he told her about this moment. Part of his brain was remembering a song he heard that morning. Another part was wondering if the aliens' skin would feel cold. Kirvan's fingers touched Jake's forehead. The reaction was instant and terrible. Kirvan's large blue eyes suddenly went completely wide. The alien's mouth opened in shock. Then came the sound that everyone would remember for the rest of their lives. It was not a human scream. It was something else, something that hurt to hear. It was high and sharp and full of pain and terror. The scream seemed to go on forever. Kirvan's whole body shook like someone had grabbed them and was shaking them hard. The alien's hands flew away from Jake's head as if they had been burned. Kirvan stumbled backward, still screaming, then fell to the floor. "Kirvan!" Vexhai shouted, rushing to the fallen telepath. The High Counselor's calm manner was completely gone. "What did you do to them?" Jake opened his eyes, confused. "I didn't do anything. I just sat here." Kirvan was on the floor, shaking and making small crying sounds. The alien's eyes were rolling back, showing only white. Foam came from their mouth. It looked like someone having a very bad seizure. Dr. Bennett jumped forward with his medical scanner. "Let me help." "Stay back," Vexhai hissed, standing between Bennett and the fallen alien. "Do not touch them. You humans have done enough damage." Tony stepped forward, his hand on his weapon. "We didn't do anything wrong. Your friend just touched the captain's head." Lisa was already working at her communication station. "I'm calling the medical bay. We need help up here." Kirvan stopped shaking but was still on the floor, breathing very fast and making scared whimpering sounds. The alien tried to sit up but fell back down. When Kirvan spoke, the words came out broken and frightened. "The chaos," Kirvan whispered. "So much chaos, the noise, the terrible noise. How do you live like that? How do you think through all that storm?" Vexhai knelt beside Kirvan and gently touched the telepath's forehead. The two aliens seemed to communicate silently for a moment. Then Vexhai looked up at the humans with a mixture of fear and anger. "What kind of beings are you?" Vexhai demanded. "Kirvan has touched the minds of creatures from 50 different worlds. Never has anything like this happened." Jake was still sitting in his chair, completely confused. "I don't understand. I was just sitting here thinking normal thoughts." "Normal?" Kirvan struggled to sit up with Vexhai's help. "That was not normal. That was like putting my mind into a hurricane. There were so many thoughts at once. Music and words and pictures and feelings and memories all mixed together. And underneath it all, this constant noise, this buzzing, this endless chatter. Dr. Bennett looked fascinated despite the scary situation. Are you saying our minds are different from other species you've met? Vexhai helped Kirvan stand up slowly. The telepath was still shaking and had to hold onto the wall. Every mind we have ever touched has been orderly, Vexhai explained. Thoughts come one at a time, clear and easy to follow, like a calm river flowing in one direction, but this human mind. Vexhai looked at Jake like he was looking at a dangerous animal. It was like 1,000 rivers all flowing at once, crashing into each other, with storms and whirlpools and rapids. Kirvan nodded weakly. I touched his mind for less than a second. In that time, I felt him thinking about this conversation, but also about someone called Marie, and about something called coffee, and about a song with words about blue skies, and about whether I would feel cold, and about the safety of his crew, and about numbers from some report, and about the smell of rain. All at the same time, all mixed together in this impossible storm. Lisa stopped working at her station and stared. You could hear all of that? But Captain Morrison was just sitting there quietly. Your minds never stop, Kirvan said, still sounding scared. Even when you are trying to be calm, there are dozens of thoughts happening at once. How do you concentrate? How do you make decisions? How do you stay sane? Jake scratched his head. I guess we're just used to it. That's how thinking works for humans. That is not how thinking works, Vexhai said firmly. Thinking should be clear and focused, one thought at a time, moving in logical order. What you have is not thinking. It is mental chaos. Tony looked annoyed. There's nothing wrong with how we think. We got this far, didn't we? We built spaceships and came to meet you. Dr. Bennett was taking notes as fast as he could. This is incredible. We've discovered a fundamental difference between human and alien consciousness. Kirvan looked at Jake with a mixture of wonder and fear. Your mind is like looking into a fire, beautiful but terrifying. I cannot understand how you function with so much happening at once. Maybe that's why we're good at handling emergencies, Lisa suggested. We're used to thinking about many things at the same time. Vexhai helped Kirvan toward the door. We must return to our ship. Kirvan needs time to recover from this one experience. Wait, Jake called out. Does this mean we can't communicate? Can't be friends? The two aliens stopped at the door. Vexhai looked back with an expression that was hard to read. We do not know, the High Counselor said. Your minds are unlike anything we have encountered. We must think about what this means. Kirvan has touched the minds of warriors and scientists and artists from across the galaxy, but never has a mind been too complex for us to understand. Kirvan looked directly at Jake one more time. Your thoughts are not evil, just impossible. Like trying to listen to 100 songs at the same time. The aliens left and the humans were alone in the meeting room. Everyone was quiet for a long moment. Well, Jake finally said, that didn't go as planned. Dr. Bennett was still writing notes. This changes everything we thought we knew about consciousness and intelligence. Lisa looked worried. Do you think they'll want to be friends with us now? Tony shrugged. Maybe it's better this way. At least they can't read our minds and spy on us. Jake stood up and looked out the window at the alien ship attached to theirs. He wondered what the aliens were thinking about humans now. Were they scared? Were they angry? Or were they just as confused as the humans were? One thing was certain. First contact had not gone the way anyone expected. 3 days passed before the aliens contacted the humans again. Captain Jake Morrison spent those days pacing around his ship, wondering if he had ruined humanity's first chance to make alien friends. His crew tried to stay busy, but everyone was thinking about what had happened in that meeting room. Dr. Carl Bennett had not stopped studying his notes and recordings from the encounter. He kept muttering to himself about parallel processing and multi-layered consciousness. Lisa, Harper tried to learn more Zephyrian language from their computer files, hoping it might help. Tony Rodriguez just cleaned his weapons and stayed alert, ready for trouble. When the message finally came, it was different from before. HFY appeared on the screen, but this time there was another alien with him. This one was shorter and had silver markings on their pale skin. "Captain Morrison," HFY said. "This is Siltara, our most experienced telepath. She has studied minds for over 300 of your years. She wishes to try again." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Try again? Are you sure that's safe? I don't want to hurt anyone else." Siltara stepped forward. Her voice was deeper than Kirvan's, more confident. "I have been thinking about what happened. Kirvan is young and was not prepared for what they found. I believe I can handle the complexity of your mind better." "But what if the same thing happens?" Lisa asked from her station. "Then we will learn something important," Siltara replied. "Your species is unique. We must understand how your minds work, or we will never be able to communicate properly." Dr. Bennett moved closer to the screen. "We've been studying our own thoughts since the incident. We think we understand what shocked Kirvan. Human minds don't think in straight lines like yours do." "Explain," HFY said. Bennett adjusted his glasses. When Captain Morrison was sitting quietly, his brain was still processing dozens of things at once. We call it background thinking. Even when we focus on one task, parts of our mind are always working on other things. "That sounds horrible," Siltara said. "How do you concentrate on anything important?" "We've evolved to filter out what we don't need," Jake explained. "Most of the background noise stays in the background. We only pay attention to the thoughts we choose to focus on." HFY and Siltara exchanged looks. They seemed to communicate silently for a moment, the way telepaths do. "We would like to try the connection again," Siltara said. "But this time, I will be prepared for the chaos, and perhaps you could try to quiet your mind as much as possible." Jake looked at his crew. They all looked worried, but also curious. This was why they were here, after all. To learn about aliens and help them learn about humans. "All right," Jake said. "But if anything goes wrong, we stop immediately." An hour later, the aliens were back in the meeting room. This time, Siltara had brought some kind of device that looked like a small helmet made of crystals. She put it on her head before approaching Jake. "This will help protect my mind," she explained. "It filters some of the mental noise so I don't get overwhelmed." Kirvan stood in the corner, still looking nervous. The young telepath had not fully recovered from the first attempt and was watching everything with frightened eyes. "Are you ready, Captain?" Siltara asked. Jake sat down and closed his eyes. This time he tried harder to empty his mind. He thought about nothing but breathing, in and out, just breathing. But even as he tried to think of nothing, he could feel his mind wandering. He thought about his breathing, but also about how the alien's crystal helmet looked, and about whether this would work, and about what his crew was thinking, and about how quiet the room was. Siltara placed her hands on Jake's head. This time the reaction was different. Siltara gasped and stumbled backward, but she did not scream. She did not fall down. Instead, she stood there with her eyes wide, breathing hard. "What did you see?" HFY asked quickly. Siltara pulled off her crystal helmet. Her hands were shaking, but she seemed more amazed than scared. "It's true," she whispered. "Everything Kirvan said is true. His mind is like a storm, but it's a controlled storm. He was trying to think only about breathing, but underneath I could feel dozens of other thoughts happening at the same time." She turned to look at Jake. "You were thinking about breathing, but also about my helmet, and about success and failure, and about something called lunch, and about the color of the walls, and about whether we were safe. All at once. All in the same moment." Jake opened his eyes. "That sounds about right. Is that really so strange?" "Strange?" Siltara laughed, but it sounded more like amazement than humor. "We think one thought at a time. Clear, focused, orderly thoughts. When I want to think about food, I think only about food. When I focus on a conversation, that is all that exists in my mind." Dr. Bennett leaned forward. "So when you're talking to us right now, you're only thinking about this conversation?" "Of course," HFY said. "How could we think about anything else? The mind must focus to function properly. Lisa looked confused. But what if something dangerous happens while you're focused on something else? Don't you need to stay aware of your surroundings? We have guards for that, Siltara explained. Some of us focus on conversation, others focus on safety, others focus on recording what happens. Each mind has one job. Tony suddenly understood. That's why you work in groups all the time. You need different people to think about different things because each person can only focus on one thing. Exactly, Vexhai said. It is efficient and orderly, but you humans, your minds are doing the work of many of our people at once. Siltara sat down heavily in a chair. I could only maintain contact with your mind for a few seconds, even with protection. The complexity is exhausting. How do you sleep with so much mental activity? We dream, Jake said simply. Our minds keep working even when we're asleep. Both aliens looked shocked. Your minds never rest? Kirvan asked from the corner. Not really, Lisa said. Even when we sleep, we have dreams, and our brains keep processing things. Dr. Bennett was scribbling notes furiously. This explains so much about the differences between our species. We're not just physically different. We think in completely different ways. Siltara looked at Jake with new respect. I understand now why Kirvan was so overwhelmed. Your mind is not chaotic because it is broken. It is chaotic because it is doing many jobs at once. You are like one person doing the work of an entire Zephyrian council. But how do you make decisions? Vexhai asked. With so many thoughts, competing for attention, how do you choose what to do? Jake thought about it for a moment. We've learned to prioritize. The most important thoughts get the most attention. The rest just stay in the background until we need them. And you can access any of those background thoughts when necessary? Siltara asked. Usually, yes. If I need to remember something or solve a problem, I can pull information from different parts of my mind and combine it in new ways. The aliens exchanged those silent looks again. Finally, Vexhai spoke. We have underestimated your species, he said. We thought you were primitive because you could not speak mind to mind, but your minds are not simple. They are complex beyond our understanding. Siltara nodded. Each human brain is like an entire network of Zephyrian minds working together. No wonder we could not read your thoughts easily. It would be like trying to listen to 100 conversations at once. Dr. Bennett looked up from his notes. Does this change how you see us? Yes, Vexhai said quietly. We came here thinking we were the advanced species meeting a primitive one, but you have abilities we do not possess. Your minds can do things ours cannot. Jake smiled. Maybe we can learn from each other instead of one species teaching the other. For the first time since the aliens had arrived, Vexhai smiled back. Yes, Captain Morrison. I think there is much we can learn from each other. News of the human mind discovery spread quickly through Zephyrian society. Within days, scientists and leaders from across their homeworld were asking to study the humans. Captain Jake Morrison found himself and his crew at the center of the biggest scientific breakthrough in Zephyrian history. Dr. Carl Bennett was in heaven. He spent hours every day talking with Zephyrian scientists, comparing notes about how different species think. Lisa Harper worked with their language experts, discovering that Zephyrian languages were much simpler than human languages, because telepaths didn't need complex words to share complex ideas, but not all the attention was good. Captain, Tony, Rodriguez said during their morning meeting, I'm getting reports that some of the Zephyrians are scared of us. They're calling us dangerous. Jake frowned. Dangerous? Why? Vexhai had asked to attend their meeting, and now the alien leader looked uncomfortable. Some of my people are worried about what your mental abilities might mean. If you can think about many things at once, and if we cannot read your minds easily, then you could be planning things we would never know about. Planning things? Lisa asked. Like what? Deception, Vexhai said quietly. In our society, lies are almost impossible. When minds can touch each other, everyone knows the truth. But your minds are closed to us. You could be thinking one thing and saying another, and we would never know. Dr. Bennett set down his coffee cup. That's true. We could lie to you. But we could also lie to each other, and we still manage to build a peaceful society. Most humans choose to be honest most of the time. But how do we know that? Asked a new voice. Another Zephyrian had entered the room. This one was different from the others. Darker skin, with red markings instead of silver. I am Commander Zethrock of the Zephyrian Defense Council. We need to discuss the security implications of your mental abilities. Tony straightened up. He didn't like the sound of security implications. Commander Zethrock continued. Your species has developed weapons and military tactics. Your minds can think about multiple strategies at once. You could be planning an attack while pretending to be peaceful, and our telepaths would never detect it. We're not planning any attacks, Jake said firmly. We came here to make friends. So you say, Zethrock replied. But with minds like yours, how can we ever be sure? The room was quiet for a moment. Jake could feel the tension building. This was exactly what he had been afraid of, that the differences between humans and aliens would cause fear instead of friendship. But then, Siltara spoke up. Commander, I have touched the human mind. I felt no deception, no plans for violence. I felt curiosity, wonder, and a genuine desire for peaceful contact. You touched his mind for only seconds, Zethrock argued. And even you said it was too complex to fully understand. He could be hiding anything in that chaos. Dr. Bennett stood up. May I suggest something? What if we show you how human minds work in a situation where deception would be most likely? What do you mean? Vexhai asked. A game, Bennett said. Humans have many games that involve bluffing and deception. If you want to see how our minds handle lies and truth, let us play one of these games while your telepaths try to read us. Jake smiled. He understood what Bennett was thinking. Poker? We could play poker. What is poker? Siltara asked. Lisa grinned. It's a card game where you try to win by having good cards, but you can also win by making other players think you have good cards when you don't. Bluffing is part of the game. Commander Zethrock looked interested despite himself. You have games based on deception? Lots of them, Tony said. But the deception is just for fun. Everyone knows that lies are part of the game. It's like practicing mental skills. This could be valuable research, Vexhai said thoughtfully. If we can observe human minds while they are actively trying to deceive each other, we might learn how to tell when you are being truthful with us. An hour later, they had set up a strange scene in the ship's recreation room. Jake, Lisa, Dr. Bennett, and Tony sat around a table with playing cards. Siltara sat nearby with her crystal helmet, ready to try reading their minds during the game. Vexhai and Zethrock watched carefully, taking notes. The rules are simple, Jake explained as he dealt the cards. Everyone gets cards. You look at your cards but don't show anyone else. Then you bet small amounts based on how good you think your cards are, but you can also bet as if you have good cards even when you don't. And the goal is to trick the other players? Vexhai asked. Sometimes, Lisa said, but you also have to know when other people are trying to trick you. It's like a battle of minds. The game began. Siltara immediately gasped as she tried to read the players' thoughts. This is incredible, she said. Tony is looking at his cards and thinking they are very bad, but he's also thinking about how to make his face look confident. Lisa is thinking about her good cards, but also about how much money to bet, and also about whether Jake is bluffing, and also about what she wants for dinner tonight. Dr. Bennett raised his bet, trying to look serious. What am I thinking about? Siltara focused on him. You're thinking about your cards, which are medium quality. But you're also thinking about this being an experiment, about how we aliens are reacting, about a scientific paper you want to write, and about whether your bluff will work. And underneath all that, you're humming a song. The aliens were amazed. Zethrock leaned forward. So even when they are actively trying to deceive each other, their minds are still working on multiple levels. Yes, Siltara said. Jake just bluffed successfully. He made Tony fold with bad cards, But while he was bluffing, he was also genuinely thinking about friendship with us, about his responsibility as captain, and about whether the temperature in this room is comfortable. The poker game continued for an hour. The Zephyrians watched, as the humans lied to each other, caught each other's lies, laughed when they were tricked, and congratulated good plays. Through it all, Siltara reported that even during active deception, the humans' minds contained layers of genuine thoughts about cooperation, friendship, and scientific discovery. "I understand now," Vexhai said when the game ended. "Your ability to think about many things at once means you can practice deception in games, but you cannot hide your deeper feelings and intentions. The complexity that makes small lies possible also makes big lies almost impossible to maintain." Commander Zethrock looked thoughtful. When Jake was bluffing about his cards, his mind was still genuinely focused on peaceful cooperation with us. The deception was only surface level. "Exactly," Dr. Bennett said. "We can lie about small things, but our overall intentions and feelings are too big and constant to hide. If we were really planning to attack you, that would be such a major focus of our thoughts that your telepaths would sense it, even through the complexity." Siltara nodded. "I could not read the details of their card strategies, but I could clearly feel their genuine emotions about our meeting. Curiosity, friendship, excitement about discovery. Those feelings were too strong and consistent to be false." Jake gathered up the cards. "In human society, we've learned to live with the fact that people can lie about small things, but we also know that big lies are hard to maintain. Eventually, the truth comes out. Your minds are like books, written in a language we cannot read," Vexhai said. "But even without understanding the words, we can sense the overall story." Commander Zethrock stood up. "I came here worried that humans were too dangerous to trust, but I see now that your mental complexity makes you more trustworthy, not less. You cannot hide your true nature from us, even if you can hide small details." "Does this mean your people will accept us as friends?" Lisa asked hopefully. Vexhai smiled. "I think this means we have much more to learn from each other than we ever imagined. Your minds work differently than ours, but that difference might be exactly what both our species need." 6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison stood in a brand new building on Zephyr Prime. The building was unlike anything either species had ever built before. Half of it was designed by humans, with lots of noise and activity and multiple things happening at once. The other half was designed by Zephyrians, with quiet spaces for focused thinking and clear, simple layouts. This was the new Human Zephyrian Research Center, where both species worked together every day, and it was working better than anyone had dreamed possible. "Captain, the exploration mission is ready to launch," Lisa Harper said as she walked up to him. She was wearing a new uniform that mixed human and Zephyrian designs. On her shoulder was a small crystal device that let her communicate basic thoughts with Zephyrian telepaths. "Which mission is this?" Jake asked. "The one to the Krell systems," Lisa replied. "Remember? The aggressive species that won't talk to telepaths because they think mind reading is an attack on privacy." Jake smiled. The Krell had been a problem for the Zephyrians for years. They were a warlike species that shot at any ship containing telepaths, but they might be willing to talk to humans whose minds couldn't be read easily. "How's the crew?" Jake asked. "Mixed," Lisa said. 3 humans and 3 Zephyrians. Dr. Bennett is leading the science team with that Zephyrian physicist, Velnara. Tony is working with Commander Zethrock on security. It's amazing how well they work together now." It really was amazing. First, nobody thought humans and Zephyrians could work as a team. The aliens needed quiet and focus. Humans were loud and chaotic, but they had learned to use their differences as strengths. Jake walked through the building toward the launch bay. In one room, he saw Dr. Bennett working with a group of Zephyrian scientists. The aliens were studying human brain scans while Bennett explained how humans could think about multiple problems at once. They were trying to develop new kinds of computers that could multitask the way human minds did. In another room, human engineers were learning telepathic meditation techniques from Zephyrian teachers. The humans couldn't become telepaths, but they could learn to focus their chaotic minds when they needed to concentrate on single tasks. "Jake," called a familiar voice. Silterra approached, wearing a new type of crystal helmet. This one was smaller and more comfortable than her old one. I wanted to thank you before the mission launches. Thank me for what? For teaching us about complexity, Silterra said. Working with humans has made me a better telepath. Before, I could only understand simple, orderly minds. Now I can communicate with species that used to be impossible for us to reach. Jake had heard about this. Zephyrian telepaths who worked with humans were becoming much more skilled. Learning to handle the chaos of human thoughts had taught them to deal with other complicated minds across the galaxy. We've learned a lot too, Jake said. Tony told me that Zetherian focus techniques have made our security teams much better at their jobs. When they need to concentrate on one important task, they can quiet the background noise in their minds. They walked together toward the launch bay. Along the way, they passed the Cultural Exchange Center. Through the windows, Jake could see human children and young Zephyrians playing together. The games they had invented were unlike anything either species had created alone. They required both focused thinking and multitasking skills. Captain Morrison, Telepath Silterra, called Commander Zethrock as they entered the launch bay. The Zephyrian commander was standing next to Tony Rodriguez, and both were looking at data screens. We've received new intelligence about the Krell systems. Good news or bad news? Tony asked. Interesting news, Zethrock replied. It seems the Krell have been watching our joint missions. They're curious about species that can work with telepaths without being controlled by them. Silterra looked surprised. They think we control other species with telepathy? It makes sense, Jake said. If you can't defend against mind reading, you might think telepaths could force you to do things. But humans proved that's not true, Dr. Bennett said, joining their group. Your minds are too complex for us to control, even if we wanted to. And working with you has shown the galaxy that telepaths and non-telepaths can be equal partners. This was turning out to be one of the most important discoveries from the Human-Zephyrian Alliance. Many species across the galaxy had been afraid of telepaths, thinking they would be controlled or manipulated. But humans had shown that complex, multitasking minds could work with telepaths without losing their independence. The launch is in 10 minutes, Tony announced. Everyone ready? Jake looked around at the mixed crew preparing for their mission. Humans and Zephyrians working side by side, each using their unique abilities to solve problems the other species couldn't handle alone. Dr. Bennett was carrying equipment that let him study new forms of alien intelligence. The Zephyrian scientists, with him, could communicate with telepathic species that humans couldn't reach. Tony had weapons and defensive systems, but he also had Zetherian advisors who could sense hostile intentions from a distance. You know, Jake said to Silterra, when you first touched my mind and screamed, I thought we had ruined everything. Silterra laughed. I thought your mind was broken. I couldn't understand how anyone could function with so much chaos. And now? Now, I think that chaos is beautiful, she said. Your minds are like music with many different instruments playing at once. At first it sounds like noise, but when you learn to listen properly, you hear the harmony. The ship's engines started warming up. It was a hybrid design, built by both species working together. Human engineering for adaptability and quick repairs, Zephyrian technology for efficiency and speed. Captain, Lisa called from the communication station. We're getting messages from 12 different star systems asking when the next joint human-Zephyrian mission will visit them. Jake wasn't surprised. Word was spreading across the galaxy about the Alliance. Species that had been isolated for centuries were asking to meet these strange partners, who proved that telepaths and non-telepaths could work as equals. After we finish with the Krell, Jake said, one first contact at a time. The ship lifted, off smoothly, heading toward space. Jake watched through the windows as Zephyr Prime fell away below them. The planet looked different now than it had 6 months ago. There were new buildings designed by both species, new spaceports for mixed crews, new schools where different kinds of minds learned from each other. Do you think we'll keep discovering new things about how our minds work? Dr. Bennett asked. I hope so, Jake replied. Every time we learn something new about thinking and consciousness, we get better at communicating with other species. Silterra nodded. The galaxy is full of different kinds of minds. Some think like us, some think like you, and some probably think in ways neither of us can imagine yet. And that's exciting, not scary, Tony added. Because now we know that differences in thinking can make us stronger, not weaker. As their ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, heading toward the Krell systems and another chance to prove that cooperation was better than conflict, Jake thought about how much had changed. A failed telepathic contact had become the foundation for one of the galaxy's most successful partnerships. Sometimes the best discoveries came from the biggest surprises, and sometimes what looked like failure was actually the first step toward something much better than anyone had imagined. The universe was full of different minds, different ways of thinking, different kinds of intelligence, and that wasn't a problem to solve. It was a treasure to explore. The human mind, with all its chaos and complexity, had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or as victims, but as partners in the greatest adventure of all, learning what it truly means to think, to communicate, and to understand each other across the vast distances between worlds and minds.